Hello, everyone. I'm afraid we won't be freestyling or ad-libbing like Wyclef, so I apologize for that in advance. So we're here to talk about how technology is changing the music industry. 10 years ago, the industry was almost on its knees. CD burners, MP3s, Napster, piracy were really eating into the way artists made a living, the way labels stayed alive. But in the last 2 years, things have really turned a corner. We're back into growth for the first time this millennium. And a lot of that is down to the work that you two are doing. This is Tracy from Warner Music and Amadea from PEX, which is a company that kind of digital fingerprints music and helps people get their royalties. Maybe I should let you explain. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. PEX essentially functions like a search engine, but for content, so for any type of music or a video. So we make a fingerprint from a content, and then we're able to search the web to find anywhere that that content has popped up in whatever form, whether it's been commented or turned into a GIF, or if it's just a snippet of the music that's been taken and turned into a mashup. So then we're able to really track the virality of a particular song or of a video and help the artists to kind of reclaim their content.
And so, Tracy, looking at these last 2 years, obviously that's part of a huge investment by the music industry to try and get things back on track. What sort of things have happened to make that change?
Yeah, so I think there's been the proliferation of streaming and streaming services. I think we've seen the growth, 10 times from what it was, 5 years ago with respect to subscribers to streaming services. So that has helped the growth. And then I think, secondly, what we're now focusing on and working with PEX is the fact that the streaming technology has opened up the scope and the scale from which users can access content. And so as it spreads wider and wider and it becomes more viral, we're kind of trying to find ways to identify that content, to understand where it's going, to understand how users are engaging with the content across different platforms.
Yeah, I guess there's a huge amount of data that must be available to you now as a record label that wasn't around 5-10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, huge amounts of data that we have whole teams that are looking at this data, on an hourly, real-time basis to understand how is content trending on one platform, how are users engaging with that content, where are they going from there once they listen to it, and then I think for us, that then gives us the understandings that we need to be able to optimize engagement in the service and our profile for our content in the service when we're doing things such as playlisting and understanding within a certain playlist, which tracks are trending and which ones are not.
Amadea, how do you see, a song going viral? What are the triggers?
Well, I think it depends, actually. It might be different from song to song, and we see very different things depending on the artist and on a particular genre. But I think what's really interesting to see is the influence that the different platforms can have. Maybe a particular moment in a music video is taken and turned into a GIF, and so Giphy becomes a really influential platform to kind of make the content accessible and the artist accessible to communities that maybe they wouldn't have touched with just a song. Maybe YouTube is a key platform to promote the content. So we'll see with different types of music and different types of artists, different platforms being used in different ways to promote the artist.
And a GIF obviously isn't something that you can earn any money off, as far as I'm aware. How do you turn that into a revenue stream for the artists you represent?
Well, I think it's us working together. I think there's a lot of technologies out there that are helping. First off, you have to find the content now that it's all over the internet, on mobile phones, on social apps. And then secondly, I think that's another thing that, that's our next thing we need to tackle as a music industry going forward, is recognizing that, the ad-supported ecosystem is something that we're trying to improve upon and optimize monetization within that type of user experience that's ad-supported.
So that kind of touches on what the music industry calls the value gap, the ad-supported YouTube streams that don't generate the amount of money that the music industry would like. YouTube says it gave $1 billion to the music industry last year. But I guess you could look at that another way and say Despacito has had more than 1 billion streams, so every play of that video hasn't even generated $1. What's the end goal with those negotiations with YouTube?
So I think one thing that we're trying to work on with them is just adjusting the recognition of the value for music. And there are territories where we are seeing an increase in monetization, which is great, and we're happy to acknowledge that. But I still think there's a ways to go until the utilization and enjoyment of music within an ad-supported service owned by a platform is where we think it should be with respect to the marketplace.
I mean, I guess they argue that the people who are using the free services on Spotify and on YouTube, all the ad-supported services, even SoundCloud, aren't necessarily ever going to be willing to take on that £10 a month subscription or €10 a month subscription. What do you make of that argument?
I believe it's true in some respects. So yes, there is the argument that it's better to get paid something than nothing at all, and to have them go on, on pirates. But I think then at some point there's a recognition as well that when a user is engaged enough with a service and is obviously benefiting from a quality product, that there should be a value associated with that we'd like to see.
And that argument aside, what are the challenges in the next 5 years for getting what artists deserve?
I think the biggest one, which I touched upon earlier, is just trying to find all this content, this proliferation of platforms that have music, and then being able to monetize that, right? So it's kind of we need to find it first, which you can speak on more, and then monetize it. So
Sure. So yeah, and that's kind of what PEX is trying to help with, is essentially identify where the content is getting used, and then giving the artists their fair share of income that they should be making from their art and their music. And so, YouTube is one platform, and they have gone a certain way to help artists monetize. But there's many platforms out there where artists cannot monetize at all. So I think that's definitely a challenge and an opportunity to really try to bridge this value gap.
I mean, it's a good problem to have, though, right? That people are engaging in music across different platforms, and that we're seeing music tech proliferate. And I think we're seeing VC investment returning to the music space where it wasn't previously. I think it's dwindled for a few years, but I think the growth in the music industry, and then that's leading to people being interested in investing again, just because they're seeing that music is all over.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting that 15 years ago, the music industry was trying to kill off a lot of the internet technology, and now they seem to be investing in not only streaming companies, but companies like PEX, and engaging with the way users are accessing music. What are the kind of key areas coming forward?
So I think for us, we're just trying to be more aggressive in being and having an active role when we invest in a company like PEX. So we want to have be more of a partner instead of just a backseat, and help drive the evolution of that partner. I think there's tons going on right now with VR, AR, AI. I know there was a presentation earlier where someone created a song with just through AI. And then, we're trying to then figure out how can we work with those platforms, because as you mentioned, we used to kind of try to stop the technologies from even moving forward, but now we're taking so much aggressive position of leaning in and recognizing that by working together with the tech, we help both of the ecosystems move forward and grow.
And without giving away any trade secrets, what sort of things are happening in VR and AR and music? What are we going to see 5 years down the line in our Oculus Rift?
Well, I think it's kind of right now we're looking at the chicken and egg problem, which, there's not enough hardware that people are creating enough content, but then so no one's creating enough content because there's not enough hardware out there. But there are, as far as we know, it sounds like the hardware manufacturers are putting out more mid-level, lower-cost models that then people hopefully will then help it become more mainstream. Speaking of investments, there was a company, Melody VR is one of the first companies that got funding this year. They've received around 20 million. So they're looking to create content for musicians, and then kind of open up an iTunes store model style where people can just buy it as a download and then experience watching your favorite band in VR.
Right up close.
Yes.
Right in the middle. You can be Chris Martin's microphone.
Exactly.
Amadea, we've talked a bit about how music technology and access to music has exploded. How do you keep track of all of these different websites and services and apps that are using content?
I mean, I think it's well, I mean, we see as these platforms pop up and as they add video and music streams, we really just make sure that we're looking into it and that we're populating all the matches that we're finding in the content that we're tracking for different creatives. It might be music studios, but also film, etc. And so really it's trying to see the data behind that and understand how these platforms can be beneficial to promoting a particular artist or.
And what about non-traditional music platforms? Are there ways that music could be exploited outside that usual ecosystem?
Yeah, which we're starting to see a lot of, and I guess what we're calling sort of multi-entertainment experiences, where music can compete with video in ways that it can't perhaps in other areas. So, if you're working out or playing a video game, music lends itself well to that. So if you're out running, you can both be experiencing running while also listening to music. If you're playing a video game, you can also be listening to music, and we're seeing, we'd like to see more interest in that instead of just using stock production music. People want to listen to the artists that they want to hear while they're playing games. So I think that is opening the door and lending itself well to even further expanding music's reach.
Yeah.
And one last question. We touched on this in an earlier panel about playlists, the power of playlists. How can you harness the technology you've got to help new artists break through? Because it seems to have been over the last 2 years, as people just go to Spotify and type in Ed Sheeran over and over and over and over again, that it's more difficult for new artists to get a foothold. So what are the technologies doing that can bring new artists to the forefront?
Well, I think, these streaming platforms like Spotify, Deezer themselves have become a platform for breaking artists, right? And we work with them, but then at the same time, we have to, they're an independent platform, and then we have to find ways to gain exposure. And I think it's through looking at views that that they can help us with the deep data analytics, and knowing at what particular point in a video are people grabbing a snippet, and then we can think about what is it that people like about that, and how do we incorporate that into creative going forward. So there's tons we can do. Like, spend all day on this.
The future is bright.
Yeah. Yes. I think going back to what Tracy was saying earlier, the great thing about music is it's so prevalent in every type of video content that's out there. So, there's music in a gaming video, there's music in a movie, and kind of when we looked at YouTube, for example, we found that there is 84% of the videos on YouTube that contain at least 10 seconds of music. So music is everywhere. And so I think it's leveraging that and finding the music that's resonating with the audience, and then giving a platform to those artists.
That's great. Well, thank you both very much. Martin Garrix is next, I believe. We'll better make way. Thank you.